Welcome to the Mike Lee Show, the Right Talk with Mike Lee. Today I have three beautiful women. No hard heads here, I'm the only hard head. This is
Micala Kinney.
Micala Kinney. This is
Mimi Styles.
Mimi Styles, and this is Sam somebody. That's
Sam
the one I
Greenleaf.
get right. I'm Mike Lee, and we're here to talk about education tonight.
We are.
Tell me
We're here to talk about education.
what y'all want to talk about.
Gifted kids.
Gifted kids?
Black gifted kids.
Black gifted kids? I was accused of being one of those ones. I was mistaken for being one of those ones by two different institutions, a college and a law school.
Yeah, well, you were one of the lucky ones then. Because the reality is that most African American or black children are not identified as gifted and talented. So that's what we're here for today, is to talk about that disparity and the lack of identifying black kids.
Well, there's an achievement gap, isn't there?
I'd say so.
Absolutely.
Tell the audience tell me about it.
I think there's a large achievement gap throughout education, not just in gifted education, between students of color and white students and white and Asian students, and then across poverty lines as well, socioeconomic status. There's great achievement gaps and opportunity gaps as well. And I think with gifted and talented education speaks greatly to that opportunity gap. A lot of students are not identified if they don't fit a certain mold or aren't seen typically or aren't typically seen in gifted and talented programs, which definitely attributes to that achievement gap that's seen.
What can we do to cure that gap?
There's a lot of things we can
Lighten
do.
up. Tell us about them.
I think definitely it starts with teacher education. A lot of teachers typically identify gifted and talented students that are what they've already seen. And when we know that so many students that are identified as gifted and talented fit the mold of a white student that's typically developed and comes from a certain upbringing and speaks a certain way, that's what implicitly teachers are looking for. And they might not realize that they have these biases just based on their background or what they've seen before. And so I think starting to educate teachers and of different profiles of gifted and talented students is a great first way to start.
Are they tested in any way?
Yes, they are. There's
For
an identification process, and it varies from district to district, but there's identification process that starts with nominations, and that's one of the biggest barriers when it's a lot of the districts in Austin and Pflugerville and surrounding districts. It starts with teacher or parent nomination, and so if a teacher or parent doesn't see certain characteristics in a child, they're not nominated and they're not given opportunities to be challenged and supported in ways that they'll reach their potential. And so if a student isn't nominated, they never get tested to see what abilities that they might have.
One of the main things that a district can do is what's called a universal screener. And that's something I think Austin does it. I know Pflugerville, Austin doesn't do it?
No, Austin doesn't do it.
Okay. Anyway, Pflugerville does that because more than 10 years ago, there were several of us GT coordinators for the district that became concerned and had read the work of Ruby Payne and Paul Slocum about giftedness and poverty and how that looks different. And so the recommendation there was give everybody in the second grade the COGAT test and then take the top 10% in each school, no matter what they score, and put them through the GT identification process. And so I kind of walked away from my GT coordinator job. I retired in 2009 thinking, oh, well, we fixed the problem with this universal screener. And I came back to the district then in 2013, having been gone for a few years, and the problem was still there. And Mimi, she's the parent of one of my students. I teach a gifted elective now in Pflugerville. And she hit me with a statistic that just crunched me about how teachers, black teachers, are so much more willing to nominate a black student.
Right.
White teachers, not so much. The black teacher nominates about 3 times more often. So the white teacher does have those biases, and that's one of the things that I think we need to address with our teachers. And it's not that they're not busy, they're not trying, they don't want to do right by kids, but the research that I've read, and in talking to my students, it seems like if a kid is, if a black student, particularly a boy, is argumentative with the teacher, he's just seen as a discipline problem. But let it be a black female or any other ethnicity or race, and it's seen, wow, listen to that kid's verbal acumen.
Right.
Listen to the critical thinking in that argument. It's a totally different mindset. And so I just feel like this is one of those cockroaches in our school system that needs to, we need to shine the light on it and just create a greater commitment at all levels, state, local, community, parents, teachers, principals, all of us to fix the problem.
I had my own experience. It was back in 57, 58. I was in like 3rd grade. And there were 2 girls, real smart girls, Jackie Blair and Beverly Smith. Beverly's father was mayor or vice mayor or something, and Jackie's father worked at GE. And what happened was I went to Lincoln Heights School, which doesn't exist anymore, outside Cincinnati, Ohio. And what happened was they pulled us in a room and they I didn't know what was going on. I didn't find out what was going on until like 5 years ago. When I ran into Jackie and we were talking about what happened, that test we took in some little room where they pulled us in one day. She was saying how they took us in the room and gave us a test, and it was actually targeting Beverly and Jackie. I was just a throw-in. I don't know why. But whatever test they gave us, I did whatever the test was. Then I started trying to look under their dress and all kinds of craziness, just being me.
Yeah.
I was a kid who finished the test with nothing to do, so I started playing. That's what I did.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it was a so-called IQ test. I don't know what I was just taking a test. Because I never thought of myself as gifted or talented. I was just a guy that did schoolwork. But it was really designed for them, not for me. I wasn't part of the plan. But their parents could probably read and write. My mom really couldn't read. She could read the Bible. And I remember one time asking her, "Mom, why'd you buy the newspaper?" And my mother said, "For y'all to read." It wasn't for her to read, it was for us to read. So a lot of it is just happenstance and I would say like luck of the draw.
Yeah.
And both of my parents were Mississippi sharecroppers.
Yeah.
So a lot of it, bias can play a part of it in some occasions, but a lot of times it's just get lucky or unlucky, whatever the case may be.
Right. And I would assume too that when you were in 3rd grade that you probably also had a black teacher, right?
Oh, in my neighborhood where I grew up, everybody was black.
Right.
You didn't see white people except on TV or unless you left the neighborhood.
Right.
That's just the reality.
So you had that teacher that may not have had those same biases.
Well, I had a teacher that Miss Snell was my
identify
3rd grade teacher. As a matter of fact, she was. After that year, she told me. She later told me that because of her experience dealing with me and my crazy self, she said she realized she didn't know what she needed to know, and she went back and got a master's degree. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's important for us to have this critical conversation about the non-identification of black kids too, just because of the fact that you have so many black kids going under the radar, and then we always say like they can use their powers for good or they can use them for evil, in terms of their critical thinking abilities and manipulating abilities. In my case, my son is wow, he's amazing. So, you know, you again, me, I would even say one of the lucky ones to have, you know, these teachers that are looking for that in you and
to me, a lot of it
testing
would
you
be the environment
appropriately.
that you're in.
Mhm,
The
yeah.
environmental factors, because I was.
Did things change for you though once somebody realized that you were gifted or probably gifted?
That I was strange.
Yeah.
They tried to send me to some country day school or something, but I didn't want to go there. I wanted to be with my friends.
Yeah, and that's another problem.
But I just, like I said, I was just a kid.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally understandable, and I hate to say problem, but another reason why we don't have as many black students, I mean, part of it is the kids and just exactly what you're saying. They don't want to be seen as white. I've been talking to my black GT students at our school, and that was expressed several times in our conversations, that they have friends that just, you know, they don't want to walk into a GT room where there's a flood of Asian and white kids and they don't see someone like them.
And you also mentioned strange. You said the word strange. I picked up on that. And so here's the thing, like when you're gifted, you can be looked upon as kind of like that weird geek a little bit. And it's sometimes because, or, you know, maybe you twitch a little bit more or act a little bit more different, or it's harder for you to sit down. So, you know, or you make noises and things like that. And, you know, it's something that I see in my kids all the time. It's something that I grew up with as well. But it's just because your sensories are like on high alert all the time. And I'm sure that all of us here have experienced something like that. Like, you know, you can't stop thinking, or if you have an idea, you know, you meditate on that idea, and if you have a vision, you can already see it, so all you do is drive towards it. And that you know, that's part of the conversation that we want to have here on Wednesday, is being able to identify what does gifted actually look like.
So what does it look like?
That's right.
Because to me, I was just strange.
Yes. Yeah, like Steve Urkel, right? Like
I wasn't like that. I was always kind of strange and wondered about strange things.
Yep.
But all my buddies were thugs. I mean, they for real.
No, I mean.
So what did they think of you when you went to law school and you went off to college and all that stuff?
They thought it was cool, you know. But
because you were going to make money. Right?
Yeah, they thought they said they knew I was going to do it. I said, you did? You know, I mean, I was surprised, because to me, it's just something that happened. I was always, well, first of all, in my mama's house, the first books you read were the encyclopedias, because that's all that was in the house. So everybody read those things. And no one's made in that, mom and dad didn't make any rules. You just knew you did your schoolwork. It was as natural as breathing. If you breathe, use the bathroom, do your schoolwork. You didn't mess around with school. You took care of the book. The books came first.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of the atmosphere they created. In the atmosphere, let's see. John was a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. Bobby has a PhD. Daryl has a PhD. My sister was a mayor, and my brother Charlie was a criminal. But it really comes down to what that child chooses.
Right.
And 'cause we all came from the same environment, but we had those dramatically differing outcomes. So a lot of times it comes down to the family structure, because you know the main thing was you didn't want mom to be mad, because if mom was mad, if you were in mama's doghouse, that wasn't a good thing. She might call out the Marines on you. That was daddy. And when dad whipped you, say for example, when dad whipped my brother, I almost started crying. He looked at me like, you want some of this? Oh no, that's okay. I'm cool. Whip him. But to me, it always comes back to the family when you're dealing with a child.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah. Having that environment.
Just like you noticed it.
Right.
In your child.
Yeah. And that, you know, again, that's what we hope to do, is educate parents, because parents are their best advocates, especially when it comes to black kids. You know, moms, dads, grandma, grandpa, whoever is at home raising that child needs to be able to recognize some of those indicators. And I'd almost wanted to ask, Sam here, who is a huge advocate for Black children and brown children. She's with Educators in Solidarity. What are some of those indicators? Like, how do we know if that child is gifted or just, just
What would
pretty
be some of
smart?
the signs or signals or
Right.
hints?
Well, I think that I really liked what you mentioned earlier about just being irritated a lot or different overexcitabilities. Because a lot of times gifted students mentally might be 2 or 3 years ahead of where they are physically. And so a lot of times they're a lot more immature than they are mentally. So if a student has a lot of great ideas, is able to make puns and connections really quickly, but might not be able to articulate it as well or might not keep up with responsibility. A lot of times typically gifted students are very disorganized, but organize a little bit more when it comes to mental ideas. They're able to make connections and I think it kind of depends because a lot of students might have verbal and linguistic abilities or more mathematical and logical capabilities. But something to look for is just learning how to read really quickly. It's usually a great characteristic, speaking really soon, but a lot of times that comes down to what experience they've had in the home too, and what you mentioned about the luck of the draw. Something that Texas has in its definition of a gifted student is that a student should be compared to similar age and experiences, and I think age, experience, and education maybe. So they should be compared to like peers. And so students should, when they're tested, they should be compared to students that are similar, not someone that hasn't had anyone really speak to them, hasn't been exposed to much vocabulary at all, be compared to someone who had someone reading to them every night from the day they were born. But there's just a few things to look for, but I think it definitely comes out in different ways based on how they've been spoken to. But I don't know if that answered your question. You might have,
Yeah,
you probably
no,
have a
that
lot of
does.
great ideas too.
Well, when you were saying what does a GT kid look like, can I plug something
All
for my
kinds of
students?
things.
So, February 16th, the Flex Kids, that's our elective at Kelly Lane Middle School for GT students. We don't know what we're calling it yet, but it's a big GT event. And one of the segments is that the kids are doing a skit where they are going to present the 7 stereotypes of gifted kids. And 90% of our gifted kids are like her, and are like her, and are like me, and possibly like you.
No,
Perfect
don't
little,
be like me.
perfect little kids
I wouldn't
who
put that on my
obeyed, did their homework, smiled, were nice, tried not to be disruptive, all that kind of stuff. Those are the kids, the ones with nice handwriting. Those are the kids that typically get nominated for GT. But there's 6 other kinds, and they don't. For example, we think that about 30% of GT kids are twice exceptional. And that means that they have dyslexia or maybe ADHD or ADD or Asperger's or autism. I see a lot of those 5 things. And a lot of people, and teachers included, look at kids and think, oh, well, there's no way that dyslexic kid can be smart. He can't even read. And that's not true. So that's just one type. But anyway, come February 16th, Kelly Lane Middle School cafeteria. My students are going to show you all the different kinds of gifted kids. There's the dropout kid and the atypical kid who has incredible talents. It may be that he writes his own rap songs and comes up with the dance moves and can memorize long passages of his own rap songs. And that's an atypical talent. But that kid is still gifted, you see. And there's other types. But
I worked at one point I was doing some substitute teaching at a school in Houston, and at a alternative school called CLC. In the teachers' lingo, we call it Criminal's Last Chance. Some go to their probation officers before school. They come to school high and all that kind of stuff. Some kids, very bright kids. I could tell they were just bad. They do things like go to gym class, and in gym class, walking around the track to stay in shape, smoking weed. I mean, just doing crazy stuff. But those guys, it seemed to me that some of them that had the worst behavior were the brightest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I would argue some of my biggest behavior problems I've had have been some of my brightest students. And a lot of times if students aren't identified earlier, even if they're identified, but if they're not receiving services or aren't getting character education as well, because a lot of times if students aren't developing, if they're developing asynchronously and they're not comfortable in their own skin, they're going to act out, or if they're bored, they're going to act out. But a lot of times if they're not getting services early, they get really used to underachieving, and they get really used to not meeting their potential, and that becomes a pattern for them. And so they want to find ways to be, you know, intrigued by certain things. I think something that's very important when it comes to gifted students is that a lot of times teachers don't quite know how to enrich or extend for those students. And so students are getting used to being told, good job, you're smart, good job. And they're not told why. What did I do good? Why should I do this again? And so they're really interested in outcomes and really interested in getting everything right. So when they don't get something right and they're met with a challenge, they're very frustrated by it. And something that's really great about all the research that's coming out lately about growth mindset, a lot of that research goes towards students that are struggling and to really encourage them about, you know, focusing on making progress. But it's really interesting looking at that research from students that things come very quickly to them. I read this study where they had two groups of students, all high-achieving students, and throughout this week or two of lessons, they would give the students one, they would praise just on outcomes and just say, good job, great job, you got it right. And the other one, they would only praise on how hard they worked. Like, I love the way you did this, or I like how hard you worked when you did this. I loved how you figured it out. And at the end, they weren't seeing to see how much they got right. They wanted to see if they were honest about how they got it right. And the students that got praised on just outcomes, 40% of them lied when they got them wrong. And then, and then all of these were honest. I can't remember how many lied here. It was like 5% lied. But that just kind of shows how, that was a 2-week study, but imagine students for years are constantly being told, good job, you're smart, good job, and just kind of pushed to the side to think, oh, they can fend for themselves because they can get it.
I had a question for everybody. About how much training do teachers get in being able to recognize gifted and talented students? You ain't getting training at all?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, and I'm going to let them answer it, but I got to let you know here, that my group, my nonprofit, it's called Black Pflugerville. And that's why we're here today, is because Black Pflugerville is putting on a critical conversation about race in the identification of Black children for giftedness. And one of the issues that we have found is that there is a lack of training for teachers. And so that's going to be one of the topics.
Let me tell you
of
why I asked that
conversation.
question. I asked that question because I went to the Black Chamber of Commerce had an education summit about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And I went to it, and one of the girls there, a white girl who just got out of school and was teaching, she was lamenting about, she was there to try to get some insight and instruction on how to deal with these young Black children she was teaching, because she was saying she didn't know how to deal with them, basically. So I was thinking in my mind, well, how would she recognize them?
Yep.
See,
Well, in answer to your question.
Now, when I was a kid, I would have been a problem, because what I do is finish my work and then I start bothering other people because I was through.
That was my son. That was my son, Kamal. Yep.
In Texas, and I'm pretty sure it can change per district, but teachers have to have 30 hours of training in gifted and talented foundational training. But a lot of that can be substituted by other things. I don't know if it's similar in your district, but it's not necessarily all in GT.
It's not required.
It's only required if you have a gifted student in your classroom. And in schools, typically schools that serve low SES students, they don't have a lot of students that are identified. So, for example, in my grade level last year, I was the only one that had any students identified in my classroom. So I was the only one required to take this training. The other 4 classrooms, I would assume, also have gifted students. They just haven't been identified, so these teachers don't have to take the training. And so there's really, they call it foundational training, but it's not a foundation. It's and then once a student is identified, they have quite a bit of time window to take this 30 hours of training, which is videos. And they can substitute it with other things, but I wouldn't describe it as.
And that can vary from school district to school district, right?
Well, the state requires 30 hours of GT foundation training, no matter what, and they're actually very specific about 6 hours of this and 6 hours of that and so on. But what bothers me is that teachers of GT kids, after that initial 30-hour training, they're supposed to get a 6-hour GT update every year.
Continuing
because GT kids, their brains are wired differently. In my opinion, they are at-risk kids who deserve as much attention and funding as the other end of the spectrum, a special ed gets. But what I found in our district is that the 6-hour additional GT training has not been happening. It gets lip service. It's tacked on to just general professional development training. And I've been to those, and somewhere between 0 and 15 minutes is devoted to GT stuff, but we check off and go, okay, they got their 6 hours of GT training. And that needs to change, because it's these kind of conversations we need to be having once teachers have done the foundational stuff. Then we need to come back and say, now here's what giftedness looks like in your poor students, in your black students, in your Hispanic girls, in these ethnicities and races where our kids are overlooked. I mean, the statistics.
So that gets down to the importance of the parent-teacher organizations, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
To advocate for the training, I think, especially. Yeah, we have to make a lot of noise, and you know, we have a lot of hold on the school board when we actually show up. You know, we have a lot of influence. By when a parent
Which
writes a letter.
Which organization is that? You're with Black Pflugerville?
Black Pflugerville.
And you're with
Educators in Solidarity.
Educators in Solidarity.
And she's my kid's teacher.
My claim to fame.
You're the henchman, huh?
Well, my claim to fame is I have taught gifted kids now in part or all of 5 decades.
Wow.
I started teaching in the 1970s. And so I've seen, and 25 of those years have been with Pflugerville. So I've seen how GT education and what's required of teachers and how it's just evolved over the years. And I think we've been going backwards lately. And
why do you say that?
Because
is it because of lack of emphasis or anything?
I think that when we started emphasizing testing above everything else, that the funding and the amount of teachers' time and focus and the workshops that we all have to attend, it went to what can we do to help our at-risk kids pass the test so that our numbers look good. And the kids that got left behind are our gifted kids.
You know, I kind of suspected that, because I always wondered as a person, I said, it seemed to me like they were spending more money on special ed than they were on talented people. Which seemed to me to be a misuse, not a misuse, but a misallocation of resources.
Absolutely.
I mean, if I were gambling, I'd bet the good hand. I wouldn't bet the bad hand.
Well, I mean, all kids need resources, especially students. Well, what you were mentioning earlier about students, and if you think of IQ, which when you're thinking of special education students or gifted and talented students, you shouldn't just look at IQ, but if you look at students that are at one end of the spectrum needing a lot of, because I don't think anyone would argue that you don't want to put a lot of support into students that are falling way behind and need, have multiple learning disabilities or a lot of other disabilities that are hindering them from learning. But you would say that not all of them need the same supports. They're going to vary. But at the other end, some students whose IQ is just phenomenally high are not comfortable in a normal classroom either. But the supports are not needed for that at that level for all students. It needs to be a more tiered system. So we should be able to be able to prioritize, not have to choose which students get prioritized, because all students need to be supported in a way that really meets their needs and makes sure that they are challenged and they are getting the full support of the school district, which right now I wouldn't say either end is really benefiting. Right now it's kind of more in the middle, and the ones that are slightly behind that are getting a lot of the focus, which I think is largely attributed to testing.
Yeah, realistically, I don't want to take any money away from special ed or deny any kid access to a good education. But the reality is that your gifted kid is the student who's least likely to learn anything new in a day. In fact, when I was GT coordinator for the district, I had my badge on, and I was walking through an elementary school, and a 3rd grade little girl came up to me, and she was a student of color, and she saw my badge, didn't know me, but she said to me, "It's been 13 days since I've learned anything new. I'm counting."
Whoa.
And that just broke my heart. And I have conversations. See, I teach wall-to-wall gifted kids. So we talk a lot about what's going on in their lives and what their gifted experience is like. And the number one thing I hear from them is, "I'm bored in my classes." They tell me Flex is the only class where they're having fun and they're challenged. And that just breaks my heart. And it boils down to district administration saying, yes, we're going to do this for our gifted kids. We are going to train our teachers on how to differentiate in the classroom for gifted kids, how to recognize that African American kid or that Hispanic kid, to get them into those programs. Because what would have happened to you if you had not been identified in 3rd grade? I mean, do you ever question what your life would have been like? Would it have been the same?
I don't know. I look at things in terms of what my experience has been. It's just that when I finished my schoolwork, I was dangerous. I was going to do something. I was going to disrupt somebody. I was going to do something. I mean, I was going to be a problem for something. I was for somebody. Probably the nearest little girl. Probably. Because that was who I was.
The reason I say that GT kids are at risk is because 8% of our dropouts are gifted kids.
I believe that.
And you put them in a situation where they're bored year after year and not learning things, and they're just rotting in their classrooms. And so they get to high school, and they start doing drugs because it's something to do. And anyway, and we just see them sort of spiral out of control until they drop out, and then that's a pipeline to prison, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And if the kid is black and poor, it triples the chance that kid's going to be a GT dropout.
I would imagine it's higher than 8% because so many students are not identified in other school districts. I would bet that's 8% of
That's
identified.
the most conservative research that I read. Some put it as high as 24%. I mean, that's scary. But if you find these kids and you do differentiate for them, there was a study that followed, I think it was 350 kids over a period of years, and they found that they were 50 times more likely to get their doctorate degree if they were identified as GT than the normal population. And another study where there were 2,000 people that were followed over 25 years, gifted kids, and they found that besides the advanced degrees, 19 of them had published books. Can't remember, there was a phenomenal, oh my gosh, it was something like over 100 patents had been done by this group. And, you know, just all the technology and feats of engineering that these smart kids can do if we let them out of the cage and see how fast they can run.
And you know, we just saw a movie that won all kinds of accolades.
Hidden Figures.
Which one?
Hidden Figures.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I remember from that movie, and I shared this with my group at Black Pflugerville, was that one little girl was identified, and then she was quickly put into a space where she could get the needed attention that, you know, in order to cultivate that little
Right.
mind, right? And then goes on to become this great
The smart
mathematician at NASA.
When John Glenn said, what's the smart one?
She was, yes, absolutely. But had she not have been identified at that age, at that young, tender age,
You
you
wouldn't
know,
know what
where
would've happened to her.
it probably would have never happened to her. That access probably, you know, would have never been open to her. So it's just so important. And, you know, the other big thing there was that her parents were behind it. And so me here, you know, I'm not a teacher or anything like that, but I'm a mom of gifted kids, you know, and very early on, I noticed they were a little bit different, right? So then I had to advocate for them. And matter of fact, my son, who was kind of a problem in school, had, Kamal. Now this is the one, you know. And Kamal is he's very fast. He's extremely quick at his work, very athletic, things of that nature. But he was a problem for teachers growing up until about third grade, when I started to notice, hey, maybe he's a little bit like me when I was his age, you know, and then I got tested. So then I had to go to that school every day and ask them, can you test my kid? Can you test my kid? You know, he does not need to go into detention. He needs different, you know, services here. Can you test my kid? And so that's what we have to remember, that gifted and even, you know, special ed, like they both have an IEP.
Mm-hmm.
So, right.
What's that?
And I'll let
Individual education plan. And
right.
And in Pflugerville, it's available, but hardly anyone ever actually goes through the process of getting it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, you know, if you have, for example, a dyslexic student or, you know, any kind of learning challenge student, they come with, you need to do this. Maybe it's extra time for test, or maybe it's preferential seating near the teacher, and just a list of things that you can do. An IEP for a gifted kid might mean that instead of this student sitting through math class, they go to the library instead and do an individualized computer program, and they learn math that's maybe 3 or 4 years ahead of them.
So we have awareness and educational challenges that we need to meet.
Absolutely awareness.
Something that I took away from Hidden Figures too is that they had to take her out of her school to get her the opportunities they need. And even though that movie took place, you know, 50, 60 years ago?
Probably.
Yeah.
The good part is that.
But
She was young then.
60s,
still
somewhere in there.
still seeing same issues now when a lot of public schools are losing students because parents don't think that the public school can serve their gifted students adequately. And as a teacher and as the classroom teacher, often I'm thinking, I also agree with you. You know, I as one teacher and without any other services, I don't think your child is getting adequately served. Even despite my knowledge in gifted studies, gifted children, I don't think that this is the best, you know, environment for your child. And so unfortunately, unfortunately, that's one way to advocate to school districts and to principals, administrators, saying that our students are leaving, which is, you know, in cities like Austin, a lot of students are leaving to go to charter schools, private schools, other districts, because they don't feel like their needs are getting met in the districts.
So what does Educators in Solidarity do? What is their goal?
It's more of a grassroots organization. It's just a group of teachers that have come together to support other organizations, particularly black and brown led organizations, to support to see where we can serve as teachers to support those efforts.
So it's a bunch of teachers.
Yes, it's a bunch of teachers, and so
from just this area, or
yes.
Or what?
So we have teachers in Austin, Round Rock, Pflugerville, and Manor ISD represented now. And so our focus is just to constantly reflect on how we are performing and teaching in anti-racist ways and culturally proficient ways, but then also how we can advocate for our students and advocate for organizations like Black Pflugerville and
You guys
partner
meet
to-
regularly?
We do meet once a month.
Once a month? When?
The first Sunday of every month.
First Sunday? After church, I hope.
Yes. Yes, that was a change I requested. So yes, it's first or second. I will let you know. You're welcome to attend.
I'm a curious guy.
And Educators in Solidarity is teaming up actually with Black Pflugerville to have this conversation on Wednesday. We have
Where?
So that's going to take place at the Pflugerville ISD boardroom. That's on 1401 Pecan Street in Pflugerville, right across the way from Pflugerville High School.
Right.
So we have Hannah Friedman, who's also with Educators in Solidarity, who's going to be the host for that conversation. We'll have Dr. Kazike Jelani Prince of Equity Turned Up.
I know Dixon's okay.
Right. And then we also have Dr. Courtney Robinson of the, she has the Black Leadership Academy and the Excellence in Education.
Right.
Great stuff, right? We also have Samantha Greenleaf that's going to be on the panel, and Miss Kinney is also going to be on that panel to discuss first off, to acknowledge the disparity of the lack of identifying Black kids in Pflugerville first, because Black Pflugerville, although we are, we want to affect change globally, right? But what we have to do now is focus on our own neighborhoods.
Right, you have to go
Right.
bit by bit.
Bit by bit, neighborhood by neighborhood. And we know there's a problem because we've seen the numbers, right? So we know that there's a disparity. I have provided a formal letter and notice to the entire Board of Trustees at Pflugerville ISD to let them know that Black Pflugerville knows that there is a disparity and we want to see some change there.
What has their response been?
There has not been a response yet. However, the GT coordinator at Pflugerville ISD, she has been phenomenal in coordinating with us and working with us to host this program. So Pflugerville ISD is also a partner in this conversation on Wednesday, and they are going to take the podium and also, give us some of these answers. So we're excited about this. It's literally this is what when you show, when you want to take action, this is what it looks like. So I'm excited to see what comes of it. I'm all into performance measurement and
No,
yeah.
not you. Not you.
So yes, I also have Measure Austin. That's my.
You can't put a number to it. You don't have anything to do with it.
I don't want nothing to do with it. Show me the numbers, or I don't believe you, right? So, I know we have at Kelly Lane, we have this many kids that are identified. I want to see a target, and see that number go up, and that's what I'm going to hold the school district accountable to.
Okay.
All my years in education, one thing has stayed the same. Parents are the most powerful people when it comes to affecting change at admin. And it doesn't take a lot. It takes more than one. It takes a group.
We used to jokingly say, let's see, the administrators are afraid, no, teachers are afraid of the administrators are afraid of the board. And the students aren't afraid of anybody. They run the joint.
Students are afraid of the parents in my house.
In your house. In your house.
But no, we're really excited to have this. And who knows? Maybe Austin, maybe some groups in Austin would have those same conversations.
Maybe ISD to get on board.
Yeah, absolutely. We need. Yeah, we need to.
So you guys are doing
impose
the
some
incubator
change
thing.
there.
So you guys are the incubator deal, right?
Exactly.
You were asking what giftedness looks
replicate it.
like, and one of the things is leadership. Leadership. I mean, that's what these ladies who are gifted themselves, but it's also what they have. When I look at someone and think to myself, is that person gifted? I look for intensity in their eyes. That's what Delisle says is the number one characteristic, and I see it in all my GT kids. And they have passion in their belly, and it's like you say, they see a goal and they go for it.
They're crazy. That's what you say about me. You're crazy. You're in the 3rd grade, think you're going to be a lawyer. You're crazy.
Had you ever thought about being a lawyer, though, before that?
Since watching Perry Mason, it looked like it'd be fun.
Well, okay.
They walk around in a suit, talking a lot of stuff. Yeah. That looked like my cup of tea.
I read this piece of research that said when you talk to black students and you ask them if they see education and hard work as being a gateway to financial success, they all say, yeah. They understand that. But then they come back with, but not for me, because of the racial differences in our society that are going to prevent me from accomplishing that. And that's sad.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
I don't, they watch too much TV. I watch the same TV, but I've just always felt that if there's something I want to do, and it's between me and the man upstairs as to whether or not it gets done. That and nothing else. I guess Sunday school was good for me. Because I've just always liked learning. And once you get in a kid or a person the idea of that learning is good, you pretty much got to fight halfway over. I was reading a book on, I read all kind of crap. Like I was reading about Jewish philosophy, about how they teach their kids the ABCs when they're little, like little infants. They're teaching the ABCs by having them, they'll take some honey and make an A and put on a plate and let them lick it up. Wow. Put a B on a plate, let them lick it up. The ABCs, that's how, so learning is sweet to them.
Oh.
That's not what happened to me. What happened to me is I had a mean mom and a daddy who would almost kill you. And the name of the game was keep mama happy. You don't want to see daddy. You want to keep him out of the play. So whatever kept him out of the play was a good thing to do. That's how I learned. See, my brother John became a lawyer. My brother Charlie, who I learned what not to do from, my brother Charlie has spent over 50 years in and out of jail.
Yeah.
And he's at least as smart as any of us, if not smarter.
Were your parents really intelligent?
I don't know. My mama went to the 6th grade and daddy went to the 4th grade. So.
Yeah.
But were they smart in other ways that you saw?
Yeah, daddy was shrewd. I think mom was smart though. Mom was just smart.
The reason I ask is because, giftedness, a lot of it is genetics, is what you're born with, and then the rest of it is nurtured.
Yeah.
You know how you're nurtured, sorry.
We all kind of got the goods, but
Yeah.
some of them didn't use the goods.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that's important to frame our conversation and on Wednesday too is to understand that if a student is not labeled as gifted, especially if these parents are advocating for their child to be identified and they're not, that doesn't mean that the child doesn't have potential in so many ways. It just means that that child is best served in their general classroom and they are already going to be challenged. And I think it's just important to remember that all kids have potential, no matter what their abilities or disabilities might be, they all have potential, but a lot of students just might need more support and more motivation and more structure to be challenged to reach the potential that they have, which I think is really important. I think a lot of times people view gifted and talented education as elitist because of the discrepancies in identification. It is an elitist program right now, but that's one of the things that we're working to make sure that it's seen as a support for students and something that they need, not something that they say, oh, I'm smart or I'm better than, which I think is
to me,
something
much
that's
of it
difficult.
depends on so much on observation. So that's why I think awareness and education is important. And I never, because I'm always learning, even now. I have a brother, one of my brothers who, I don't think he has a degree, one of the few of us without a degree. But he can draw like he's taking anatomy or something.
Yeah.
And I was asking him about drawing one day. I said, Keevan, what's this about drawing? He said, well, drawing is just a matter of interpretation. Oh, yeah. And I'm thinking, really? Well, it's just a series of lines and angles and circles and stuff. So when he sees the picture, he sees something that I don't see.
Right. Right. Different perspective.
Right.
Yeah. Different gifted perspective.
He'll beat me in chess all day long.
You know, you mentioned chess, right? So I have to plug Black Pflugerville one more time, because one of the programs that we have at Black Pflugerville is a kids club. So while the
you
parents,
got the chessboards.
That's right. While the parents are meeting and organizing and trying to collaborate on making change in our neighborhoods, we have our kids who are being challenged by people like Gabriel Nila, by a few different mentors that are playing our kids in chess and teaching them strategy at an early age. So again, me as a mom of gifted kids, everything I do, anytime you see me out there yelling at police or whatever, it's all because of my kids, right?
You don't yell at the
Oh, come on.
you out there taking numbers. I know what's going on. You out there badge number so.
But it's okay. Myself and especially Austin Police Department have a very good relationship right now. We are working. We're doing some
She's
positive
still taking
things.
Numbers, y'all.
Hey.
Don't let her fool you. She's taking numbers.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, I'm gonna keep going with what I was saying. It's important for parents of gifted kids to know to expose their kids, to different opportunities. For instance, Zion, right? My son. I had to take him out of school, right, for a week, and we went all the way to New York so that he could see the United Nations. Walk through the United Nations and experience it, and go into the rooms that he saw on TV, just because we talked about it and he didn't really get it as much, right? But he has this hunger and this thirst for real life, knowledge and experience. So so those are some of the things that I have to do as a mom is, I know that I'm taking my kid out of school and I'm maybe breaking a couple of rules and everything, but and thank God I have teachers that work with me with this kid, right? But you have to be okay with being a little bit uncomfortable with your gifted kid. That's kind of my mantra. As long as it's going to be positive for my child, and at the end of the day, they're going to be fed the right way, and educationally, then I'm doing my job.
My mom used to make me uncomfortable.
That she did. If I was your mama, I'd make you uncomfortable too once in a while.
She had that belt. She didn't have to worry about them much.
I had the strap. I know that's right.
Yep. Go in there and give me something. Give me something to beat you, and I come back, tear off a piece of paper.
Now we are not advocating for beating kids
My brother
at
would
all.
go get the belt. She said for you to go pick the weapon. Go pick up something that's not gonna hurt you.
That was a long time ago, Mike.
I was always thinking, just
Yeah.
go give me something to beat you. Here.
You were problem solving.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't want to get beat bad.
No, you said you're always thinking. I remember when Zion was, this is again a testament to a gifted child, and me as a parent having to recognize some of these signs. But when he was 3 years old, we're walking through Walmart, and he just sits there and stops breathing, and I look at him, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he's turning red, and he says. And he takes a breath and he says, I forgot to breathe. He just says, I forgot to breathe, Mom. I forgot. I didn't think about it, and I didn't breathe, and I sit there and I'm like, oh my gosh. And a couple years later, 4 or 5 years old, he couldn't go to sleep one night, and just was intently crying and just so upset because he was designing a robot. And the robot, he was designing the lens for the robot, okay? He would carry around a journal, a little kid carrying around a journal, designing a lens, and he couldn't think of how to, create this lens for this robot. So we have to know that, you know, there are these kids that are gifted, they have their special needs. They're definitely special needs, and through legislation and through advocacy from people like myself and these great teachers right here, we have got to demand for the resources needed for these kids to excel. So that's what we're hoping to do on Wednesday at 6:30.
We're about to go off in 3 more minutes. And what time is this meeting and where?
6:30 in Pflugerville at the Pflugerville ISD boardroom on Wednesday the 25th.
Where's the Pflugerville ISD boardroom? On Pecan Street, you said?
That's right, 1401 Pecan Street.
So if you if you find it that far, just follow the crowd, right?
That's right. That's right. And you know, they can always contact me. You know, at mimi@measureaustin.com. They can, you know, always contact me, give me a quick email, and I will give them whatever information that they need.
Okay. And you're on Facebook, right?
That's right, Mimi Styles. That's
and I
right.
thought Black Pflugerville was just about economics.
Oh, no, it's definitely not just about economics. It's about, we have pillars. We have education, we have economics, we also have, civic engagement. And, you know, we're also restoring the historic colored cemetery in Pflugerville.
I guess I better say before we go off, so yeah, we're going to have Council Member Orr Houston on February 6th. And other than that, February is going to be Legends Month. I'm going to bring some people in and talk about some people who've been around Austin way longer than me, who can impart some good information about Austin. I got 2 more minutes.
That sounds exciting. That sounds exciting.
KT, I'm trying to get KT down here and
You know,
couple other people.
he came out to Black Pflugerville.
Who? KT?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Mr. Thomas, I
For
hope
sure,
he's,
for sure, for sure.
yeah, absolutely.
I don't think anybody can turn her down. That smile.
Mike Lee can. Oh, man, see, look at him. He's just, he's just waiting.
Put your sunglasses back on. No comment.
Educators in solidarity. A bunch of teachers running around raising hell, right?
That's the plan.
That's right.
You're down here trying to be quiet and coy. You're a silent assassin, huh?
I have one last piece of advice for parents.
What's that?
The anecdote you just told about Zion, that's what teachers need to hear from parents. If you think your child is gifted, bright, maybe the teachers aren't seeing it, maybe the teachers are so busy they don't have time to see it, call the teacher and say, this is what my kid is thinking about at home. This is what he's got in his notebook that he sleeps with. This is what my child asked about, the hard questions.
So you need parents to snitch on their kids.
Absolutely.
Snitch to the teacher.
Yes.
What a word.
Yeah, parents need to be aware, and that's one of the biggest reasons why we're having this meeting, is to make parents aware, and then giving them the necessary tools that they need to advocate properly. So it's a win-win.
Did you get an announcement in through the churches?
Oh, no.
If you didn't,
We didn't.
gotta go through the churches.
Got to go through
Yeah.
the churches. That's right.
I guess they can still hear me.
Yeah, it's an important conversation.
Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
yeah, so we as we go into this new.
I'll have a bunch of preachers on my show shortly.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
We got
Should send a flyer to him to divvy out to everybody.